What if everything I is wrong? Not slightly wrong, not a little off, completely fabricated. There is a site buried in Turkey right now, today, that proves advanced civilization existed 7,000 years before Egypt was even an idea. And in 30 years of excavation, they have uncovered less than 5% of it. The technology exists to see what's down there. The funding exists. The interest clearly can exist.
Look at the depth on that.
So
it's
why
enormous.
is 95% of the most important site in human history
the energy signature
still buried?
is off the charts?
That is the question they don't want you asking. The year is 1994. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrives at an unremarkable hilltop in southern Turkey near the city of Şanlıurfa. The site had technically been spotted in a 1963 survey, but researchers dismissed it. They wrote it off as a medieval cemetery. Nobody looked twice. Schmidt looked twice. What he found beneath that hill would consume the rest of his life and shake the foundations of every history textbook on the planet. Göbekli Tepe. Translated from Turkish, it simply means belly hill. But what sits beneath that belly is anything but simple. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing up to 18 feet tall and weighing as much as 50 tons, arranged in precise circular enclosures. Carved onto every surface, lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures, abstract symbols, humanoid figures with arms and hands resting on their stomachs. The craftsmanship is not rough or primitive. It is deliberate. It is skilled. It is haunting. And here is the fact that shattered the academic world. Göbekli Tepe has been dated to approximately 9600 BCE. That's over 11,600 years ago. It is twice as old as Stonehenge. It predates the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years. It existed before the wheel, before writing, before agriculture, before any civilization we were ever taught about in school. According to everything mainstream archaeology had told us about human history, the people who built this should not have existed. Not like this. Not with this capability. The official story of humanity goes like this. Primitive hunter-gatherers wandered the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Then gradually they learned to farm. Farming led to permanent settlements. Settlements led to social organization. Social organization led to religion, monuments, and civilization. This is called the Neolithic Revolution. And we were told it began around 10,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. Göbekli Tepe doesn't fit that story. It destroys it. Because the people who built this site, according to mainstream archaeologists themselves, were hunter-gatherers. No farming, no cities. No writing, no metal tools. Just stone hammers and flint blades, and yet they organized the labor of hundreds or possibly thousands of people to quarry, transport, and precisely erect 50-ton limestone pillars on the top of a mountain ridge. How? Why? And perhaps most importantly, who taught them? Let's talk about what makes this site genuinely deeply impossible, at least by conventional understanding. The pillars. They are not crudely stacked rocks. They were quarried from limestone bedrock in a nearby area, shaped into perfect T-forms, transported up to the ridge, and stood upright in stone sockets that were deliberately cut to receive them. The largest unfinished pillar still lying in the quarry is estimated at over 50 feet long and would have weighed around 50 tons. Modern engineers have scratched their heads over this, moving a 50-ton stone with primitive tools up a hillside and setting it perfectly vertical. This is an extraordinary logistical challenge even today. And yet the builders of Göbekli Tepe did this not once, not twice, but across multiple enclosures with dozens of pillars, some standing in pairs at the center of each ring like silent gods overlooking the space. Those central pairs of pillars are particularly eerie. They have carved human arms, hands, belt-like decorations. They are not just columns, they appear to represent beings of great importance, beings that were worshipped or feared or honored. Nobody knows for certain who or what they depicted. Then there are the animal carvings, hundreds of them. Foxes dominate the imagery. Fox remains have been found repeatedly during excavations, suggesting this animal held deep ritualistic significance. Vultures carrying what appear to be severed heads, scorpions clustered in threatening formations, snakes coiling around pillars. Each enclosure has its own unique set of species, leading some researchers to suggest that different enclosures belonged to different groups or clans who converged at this site. Researcher Gil Hackley, working with the Israel Antiquities Authority, published a study revealing that the layout of the enclosures followed intentional geometric planning, a hidden architectural logic embedded in the site's design. This was not random. This was engineered. Someone with sophisticated spatial intelligence designed this complex with a purpose. And then there is the water system. Beneath the site, archaeologists discovered a rainwater harvesting network, carved channels feeding multiple cisterns cut directly into the bedrock, capable of holding at least 150 cubic meters of water, a hydraulic infrastructure at a hunter-gatherer site, more than 11,000 years ago. Ask yourself, does that sound like the work of primitive wanderers? Here is where things go from extraordinary to staggering. In 2017, researchers Martin Sweatman and Dimitrios Tsikritsis from the University of Edinburgh published a peer-reviewed study in the journal Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry. Their conclusion was electric. The animal carvings on Göbekli Tepe's pillars, they argued, are not just decorative. They are a star map. The creatures carved into the stone correspond to ancient asterisms, groupings of stars, and when decoded using the precession of the equinoxes, the famous Pillar 43, known as the Vulture Stone, appears to be a date stamp pointing to approximately 10,150 BCE, give or take 250 years. That date is not random. It corresponds almost precisely to the proposed Younger Dryas impact event, a catastrophic cosmic strike, most likely from a fragmented comet hitting Earth's atmosphere, that triggered a rapid return to Ice Age conditions around 12,800 years ago. This event is thought to have caused massive wildfires, a sudden global temperature drop, the extinction of dozens of large animal species, and the collapse of whatever human cultures existed at the time. In their analysis, Pillars 2 and 38 describe the path of the Taurid meteor stream, the same meteor stream scientists believe delivered the catastrophic Younger Dryas impactor. And Pillar 18, one of the central godlike figures in Enclosure D, appears to symbolize a comet itself. If Sweatman and Tsikritsis are correct, then Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple. It is a monument to apocalypse, a stone record of the worst day in human history, deliberately encoded in carvings that would outlast everything, so that whoever came after the catastrophe would know what happened. This aligns with what alternative historian Graham Hancock has argued for decades. In his landmark book Magicians of the Gods, Hancock proposes that a lost, advanced civilization existed before the Younger Dryas cataclysm, and that Göbekli Tepe is one of the last traces left by its survivors. People who had once possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and cosmology now scattered across a broken world, desperately trying to preserve what they knew in stone before it was all forgotten. The mainstream scientific community is divided. Many archaeologists who work the site reject the astronomical interpretation.
They are definitely reacting to the
But
UV
here is
spectrum.
what they cannot reject.
And the data
The Younger Dryas
precisely with the
impact
seismic
hypothesis
events we
itself has
recorded last
accumulated
month.
overwhelming geochemical evidence in recent years. Scientists have found impact markers, nanodiamonds, platinum, iridium, shocked quartz, at dozens of sites across 4 continents, all pointing to the same catastrophic cosmic event around 10,800 BCE. Something hit this planet, something terrible, and the people of Göbekli Tepe appear to have known it was coming, or built this site to ensure the memory of it survived forever. This is the part that should make your blood run cold. Göbekli Tepe was first identified in 1963. Serious. Excavations didn't begin until 1994. That means the site sat untouched and officially unrecognized for 30 years. And in the 3 decades since excavations began, archaeologists have uncovered less than 5% of the total site. Read that again, less than 5%. In 30 years, of what many call the most important archaeological discovery in human history. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed that beneath the soil there are at least 16 more circular enclosures, potentially dozens of additional structures, and features we have not even begun to identify. The radar images suggest the site is vastly larger than what has been uncovered. This isn't a small temple on a hill. This may be an entire complex, a city of ritual, a seat of ancient knowledge, spanning an area that dwarfs what we can currently see. So why has the excavation moved so slowly? The official reasons are preservation. Digging too fast risks damaging delicate carvings exposed to weather and erosion. The conservation-first approach has been the stated policy since 2020, with restoration work prioritized over rapid excavation. And these are not unreasonable arguments. Archaeology is meticulous by nature. Context matters. Every layer tells part of a story, and once you dig through it, that context is gone forever. But there's a harder question that these official reasons don't fully answer. We have ground-penetrating radar. We have LiDAR. We have 3D scanning. We have remote sensing technology that can map underground structures without disturbing a single grain of soil. The technology to see what is down there without touching it exists right now. And yet the full results of the subsurface imaging are not publicly available. Alternative researchers have pointed to a pattern that is difficult to dismiss. Specific carved objects and artifacts uncovered at the site have not been fully published. The lead archaeologist for over a decade, Dr. Lee Clare, deleted his social media accounts after growing pressure from the public demanding transparency. Researchers who have visited the site and asked hard questions have been given what Clare himself admitted is an unsatisfying answer. We may never know the full truth. Some voices in the alternative history community go further. They argue that if the buried sections of Göbekli Tepe reveal even more sophisticated structures, if the deeper layers show evidence of writing, of advanced tools, of astronomical instruments, then the entire official timeline of human civilization collapses. And with it, the institutions, the careers, and the academic consensus that has been built upon that timeline for over a century. Is that motive enough to slow walk the most important excavation in the history of our species? You decide. There is one final detail about Göbekli Tepe that almost no one in the mainstream media discusses. And it may be the most important detail of all. Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned. It was not destroyed by war. It was not consumed by fire or swallowed by flood. It was deliberately buried, around 8,000 BCE. After being used for roughly 1,500 years, the people who built and maintained this site filled every enclosure with rubble, sediment, and carefully packed soil. The pillars were sealed underground. The entire complex was entombed, intentionally and methodically, by the very civilization that created it. This is not the behavior of people abandoning a place. This is ritual. This is intention. And this act of deliberate burial has divided researchers into two camps. The first camp says this was a kind of religious closure, a cultural transition in which the old ways were honored and sealed away as society moved toward agriculture and new belief systems, the ending of one era archived in stone. The second camp asks a darker question: what were they hiding it from? Some researchers have proposed that the burial was an act of protection, that the builders knew something was coming. Perhaps another catastrophe? Perhaps an invading force with the power to destroy what they had created. By burying the complex, they may have been ensuring that it survived. That one day, thousands of years later, someone would dig through the soil and find what they had left behind. A message in a bottle, buried not in the ocean, but in the earth itself. And here is the forbidden question that ties all of this together. If Göbekli Tepe existed 11,600 years ago, fully organized, architecturally sophisticated, astronomically aware, then what came before Göbekli Tepe? Nobody built something this complex on the first try. There had to be a learning curve. There had to be preceding generations of builders, priests, astronomers, engineers. There had to be a civilization or the remnants of one that already knew these things and passed the knowledge on to the hands that carved these stones. That civilization has no name in any history book. It has no recognized ruins. It has no acknowledged place in our story. But Göbekli Tepe is proof that it existed. We are standing at the edge of a buried truth, one that mainstream institutions have been slow to dig for, literally and figuratively. The stones of Göbekli Tepe are not just archaeological artifacts. They are a challenge, a gauntlet thrown across 12 millennia, demanding that we ask the questions we've been discouraged from asking. Who built this? What did they know? Who taught them? What came before? And why? Of all the things buried at this site, does the truth seem to be the most heavily protected? The answers may still be buried in that hill in Turkey, in the 95% we haven't touched yet, in the chambers and enclosures and features that radar has seen but no shovel has reached. And that should make every one of us ask, when are they going to let us look? If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who still believes the official version of history. And drop in the comments, what do you think is really buried at Göbekli Tepe? I'll see you in the next one.